Aloha, my name is Representative Justin Woodson. This is a very exciting event that we're having tonight. We're having a legislative listen. What's unique about it is we're having a majority of the subject matter chairs and the entire core House leadership here. The purpose of this event is for the community to interact with the legislators, because oftentimes the community may see these legislators on TV or in the paper, but seldom do they have a chance to actually interact with them on a face-to-face basis. So it's important not only for the community, it's important for the legislators. As they consider all these proposals, they need to see how we do things on Maui. It's not better or worse, but it is slightly different, and they need to take that into account as they're passing policy for the state of Hawaii.
And aloha. Thank you very much. My name is John Mizuno. I serve as the Vice Speaker of the House. I'd like to introduce our leader, the Speaker of the House, everybody's man in Maui, Speaker Joe Souki.
And to listen to the representatives, especially your representative Justin Woodson. So without further ado, I want to introduce Justin to all of you, and he will then introduce the members and give you some highlights. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you very much. First, I want to acknowledge Mr. Mayor Alan Arakawa, who's in the crowd. His wife. I think I saw, Mr. Mayor, thank you for what you do. I think I saw Councilman White also here. There he is. And Councilman Couch as well. Thank you so much for being here this evening. This is a very exciting time in Hawaii's history. Before we get started, I want to introduce these legislators. This is your House of Representatives. These are your public servants, including myself. And it's just an honor and privilege to be here this night. First, I'll start from my left and go to my right. We have the Chair of Labor and Public Employment, Chair Nakashima. And then next to him, we have Representative Chris Lee. He is the Chair of Energy and Environmental Protection. No stranger to you is Representative Mele Carroll. She is the Chair of Human Services. And of course, we know Mr. Speaker Joe Souki. He is our fearless leader, and we are very happy to have him. And to my right, we have Chair Sylvia Luke. She is the Chair of the Committee on Finance. We have next to her, Chair Karl Rhoads, who is the Chair of the Judiciary Committee. And then next to him, we have Chair Della Belatti, who is Chair of the Health Committee. And chairing Water and Land is Madam Chair Evans. Cindy Evans, to be exact. And our majority leader, of course, is Representative Saiki. Majority Leader Saiki. And last but certainly not least, we have the individual that will be moderating after I give some brief remarks. We have Vice Speaker John Mizuno. Let's make a quick announcement. So we want to make sure that we give everyone an opportunity to share their thoughts and opinions. So if you have a question, concern, or just a thought, please write it down on the index cards. We're going to be collecting those and we're going to be taking those up, and that way we can expedite the questions and making sure that we give everyone an opportunity. So this is a very exciting time in Hawaii's history. What we're doing right now, we have big change happening. We have big change happening on an array of different issues. We're taking fresh approaches to some of these traditional solutions, traditional challenges. So the question is, how do we move forward together? What do we do about public education? Should we change it or keep it the same? What do we do about healthcare? What do we do about protecting our environment? What do we do about protecting our workers? What do we do about expanding the middle class? What do we do about diversifying the economy? So these are the type of questions that we need to work together. This is a forum that we can have input from the community, and we need that community to move forward. So this is a very exciting time, and this is a very unique event. It's a special event because we not only have the entire core leadership team with us tonight, we have a majority of the subject matter chairs. So of course it's important to have the leadership. I think that goes without saying. I'll talk a little bit as to why it's important also to have the subject matter chairs. As you're aware, or maybe you're not aware, for the legislature, which starts in about 2 weeks, we actually started yesterday. So we have our staff, teams in office. They're researching, they're preparing, they're training, they're getting ready to start the session here in about 2 weeks. But once that session starts, the body is going to consider about 3,000 bills to start off. So there will be approximately 3,000 bills introduced. Leadership will then take those bills and disperse them to the subject matter committee chairs. And those chairs will make recommendations for the rest of the committee members. So they will either say, the recommendation is to pass this bill, the recommendation is to amend this bill, the recommendation is to visit this bill at a different time, or the recommendation is to hold a bill. And that recommendation will go out to the committee. So it's important also for the subject matter chairs to be here. But ultimately, this is a legislative listen. We want to hear from you, and it's our chance, our community's chance to speak to these guys that sometimes we don't see only except for on the TV or the newspaper. Now, I would humbly suggest that for me, a lot of you know me. Those of you who don't know me, you can always just come up to me. You'll see me at Walmart. You'll see me at church. You'll see me at the football field, the soccer field, Maui High School, wherever. You can come up to me and talk straight with me. Share your concerns, your questions. I'm always open. And furthermore, I go door to door. I think that's important to stay engaged with the community so we know the issues fresh. So we always are cognizant of what is on the concerns of the community. But these guys are not going to go door to door. These guys are not going to be at your house, primarily because they have their own communities to tend to. But it's important for us to talk to them now. And as we start the session, we look forward to working with you, and it takes all of us to work together in order to move this state forward. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Vice Speaker, who is going to be doing the moderating for the rest of the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Woodson. Members, we found the most efficient way to address a crowd like this is to have the index card questions. So we're going to do our best to answer all of your questions in a timely manner. First question, will you support funds going from prisons to rehab facilities? I believe this would be for Representatives Carroll and Belatti. Again, will you support funds going from prisons to rehabilitation facilities? That was the question. Is Rep. Carroll here? Mele, did you want to go first? And then have Belatti?
Thank you.
Belatti Luke, I'm sorry. Okay.
You know, one of the things that we're working on actually is relocating the Maui jail on this island. You know, Maui jail is in the middle of a residential area, and one of the priorities for the legislature in working with your Maui representative is finding a new site. And one of the things we need to do is we need to make sure that we have water and resources. Right now, unless we move, right now, we can't even provide sex offender, drug treatment, or some of the services that these inmates need because it's so overcrowded. You have 3 people in 2 bunk beds, and we need to make sure that we move these inmates out of the residential area into a suitable area so that we can provide the type of services that that we need. So that's kind of one of our priorities. And in addition to that, you know, we're always cognizant that, you know, we need to provide services and rehabilitation so we can reduce the recidivism. So it is a priority that we are putting in this year.
Aloha, my name again is Della, Belatti, and I'm the chair of the Health Committee. I will always support putting more monies towards rehabilitative services, but I think, you know, we have to be prudent with the monies that we have, and I think that's the course that our body takes towards these issues. One of the biggest challenges in healthcare right now is how do we do with behavioral mental health issues, and so that goes to some part to some of the rehab services for people who we find cycling into the prison populations. So we are having discussions with DPS because they need to beef up the medical care in the prison systems. We are having to look at what's happening at the Hawai'i State Hospital, which is very close to being at census on a daily basis. We also have to look at restoring and strengthening community mental health services. So there's a lot that needs to be done, and where we can pool resources, I think we have to do that. Another initiative that's taking place on a statewide level is the Healthcare Transformation Initiative, and there's a lot of discussions within the healthcare industry about how do we take what's happening with the Affordable Care Act and all the services that are supposed to be now covered as essential health benefits. So there's a lot of activity going on, and it's about, I think, as Representative Woodson says, we all have to sort of be talking with one another, engaging with one another, so that we can design the systems that are going to address these mental health issues that we find affecting all of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Carroll.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'd just like to add, in addition to my Chair of Health, I also support any programs that has to do with rehabilitation, treatment, and so forth. But the other side of this whole issue, that during the interim that I've had the privilege of co-chairing with our Judiciary judge in Honolulu, Judge Browning, as well as the Department of Human Services Deputy Director Barbara, was through the Pew Foundation's participation, was looking at our youth and looking at programs, because we don't necessarily want to incarcerate our youth, and we want to find ways so that they can have a positive experience after going through the situation and circumstances that they're going through. And so through that efforts, we actually came out with a final report and some recommendations, and one of the top priorities has to do with the mental health behavioral services and how we can access that. And it's a struggle, but there is proposed legislation that is being drafted as we speak, and we're working together with the department, with the governor's office, as well as the judiciary branch. The question is, would we support funding to be moved towards programs and such? Absolutely. If there is a possibility of that, I do support that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much. We're going to move on, members. We have a question directed to Representative Woodson. What is your stance on cane burning? Representative Woodson.
Okay, thank you so much.
Cane burning.
Cane burning, thank you. This is a very hot topic, but I appreciate the question nonetheless. This is something that kept coming up as I was going door to door, the issue of cane burning. So I took active steps, and I made an appointment with Mr. Rick Volner, who is the General Manager of HDNS. That appointment started at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and we had opportunity to actually go out and take a look at the cane burning process. So it's actually very scientific as to how the process takes place, even when it comes down to how they're actually lighting the cane burning. So the plume, in best case scenarios, actually goes directly up into the atmosphere and then it's dispersed out above the ocean. That always has to happen because we're continuing with nature, and nature will do as it will. But the point is that they are very careful in terms of how they actually burn the cane. That's point number one. Point number two, I would say, is I brought up the concerns that have been brought up to me with regards to cane burning directly with Mr. Rick Volner. And a lot of you know Mr. Volner. This man is of high integrity. He's a family man. He's a good guy. I would vouch for him. He doesn't need me to vouch for him, but I would vouch for him. And I asked him, I looked him in his eye, and I said, these are the concerns. Rick is working with the community on addressing these concerns. They are taking active steps for addressing some of the concerns of the community, which primarily deals with just actually what we refer to as the Maui snow coming down. That sometimes can be troublesome. But he is working on that issue. I will also say that HCNS is making steps. They are taking action towards moving to renewable types of solutions so that they in fact don't even have to burn the cane. So when we came back and sat in his office after we actually witnessed the cane burning, Mr. Barnum was sharing me some of the technologies and some of the new equipment that they are using to deal with this issue. So specifically, they have specialized John Deere tractors. I think they're like 3250 renewable harvesting tractors or something like that is a technical term. And what these tractors do is they actually go into the field and the teeth actually strip off the cane, the leafy portion of the plant so that they don't actually have to burn that cane. That is a renewable solution. Now the challenge is that, in fact, is one of topography. Some of the land is not flat. This technology only works with completely flat land, and it cannot work where there are large boulders, which a lot of the HCNS real estate actually has these large boulders and is not flat land. So for about the 30% of their properties that they can, in fact, use this equipment, they do. So the point number two is that they are making steps. They're working with the community to better their practices. They are, in fact, environmentally friendly. The third point I will make is one of the actual workforce itself. HCNS, as I believe it, they employ approximately 800 employees directly at the actual plant. And there are support services which aggregate to about 1,500 people total. So that is 1,500 people that live in our community. That is 1,500 breadwinners. That is my neighbors, that is your neighbors, that is your family members. So to me, to say we're just going to shut the plant down, I think is highly irresponsible. I think we need to work with them because they are working with us. They are making concerted efforts to better their practices. And as we move forward, we need to make sure that we work in partnership with one another.
Thank you very much. Any other lawmaker like to add to what Representative Woodson? Thank you very much, Representative. Okay, members, distinguished guests, we have about 4 or 5 questions on this one topic related to HHSC and your hospital in Maui. And so to try to condense this in a timely manner, I'm going to focus all these questions and target our Chair of Health, as well as our Chair of Finance and our Speaker, and anyone else who might feel they have some things to add. So here goes. At a time when there's decreasing medical providers in Hawaii and increasing healthcare demand, Will you support legislation for more medical education in the islands? Again, this is a four-part thing because it all relates to the same thing. Representative Belatti and perhaps Representative Luke, Chair.
More medication. Yeah, read off the questions.
Read off. Okay. What I'll do is I'll read off all the questions. I hope all of you have good memories, and you can go for it after that. That way we can save time. So the first question again, if you can just keep this in your mind, at a time when there is decreasing medical providers in Hawaii and increasing healthcare demand, will you support legislation for more medical education in the islands? Question number 2, given the unique geographic position of our island state, should we not be actively pursuing a second hub of complete medical services to permanent residency? Question number 2. Question number 3. If legislation is not proposed next session allowing Maui Medical Center and other HHSC hospitals to pursue public-private partnerships, how does the legislature recommend we address our budget deficit, aging facilities, unfunded liabilities, lack of subsidiaries, lack of physicians, and healthcare workers? Okay, so that's question number 3. Question number 4. What, if any, legislation has been proposed regarding the HHSC facilities, in particular those on Maui? Follow-up, if the decision is to privatize, what measures would be taken to accommodate the public employees at the facility? Okay, those 4 questions. Let me turn it over to our panelists.
Okay, I can tackle it first. So on these general questions on HHSC, let me just review some of the things that we did last session. There was, of course, the discussion concerning banner and full-on privatization. That was stalled, but the status of the law currently is that the 2009 law still allows for the discussions to occur. What we've done in the session with privatization, or the process has essentially slowed down. And what we have asked HHSC to do is to present to the legislature what are the true costs for running all of the regions. Because what we don't have a handle on every year is what is the cost of operating the facilities on all the islands. And we need to know that, to know what is the state on the hook for long term if we don't privatize. With that said, I do think that the conversations about privatization are still occurring because that is the status of the law. It allows for those conversations to happen. And what needs to happen is there needs to be a conversation amongst all the stakeholders, the unions, HHSC, corporate, and the regional boards. And so those are the kinds of things that are happening right now. I think what you can expect from the legislature is that we are going to we're going to ask the tough questions. We don't want to give away facilities. We don't want to leave the workers unprotected. So there's lots of questions that have to be answered before any of the regions fully privatize. With that said, some of the things that we're doing to help both the regions as well as healthcare move forward. The first question asked about medical education and what do we support to strengthen medical education and medical care in the system. One of the things that we did this year was with the Big Island, we started funding a pilot project for primary care residencies. And so that's looking at structures of how HHSC can partner with different healthcare providers to care for people in the community through accountable care organizations and patient-centered medical homes. So that's some of the things that we are doing. That residency program is a partnership with HHSC Big Island, and Representative Nakashima could talk about that further. With the question about the need for a hub of healthcare, and I think what that question really goes to, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but I know that there's a sense that, Maui could be the center. Maui should have its own hospital. It does. I think one of the things that we have to look at as we ask the questions about privatization is, what is the cost of healthcare in the region that you're in? How can we structure it? What are the services that are needed? And all those kinds of questions have to be answered. And then we fund it. At the end of the day, I think, and I believe that the safety net that HHSC represents is something that the state has to fund. So understanding what those costs are is critical. Speaker or Representative Luke?
Private, public, non-profit, I believe we're reaching into a situation where we need to consider that item. Formerly, I was opposed to it. However, Maui has a problem now. For one thing, they have an aging infrastructure. They have doctors that are retiring and no one to take their place. We don't have a neurologist. We have presently someone who's looking at to replace Dr. Haynes, who has to do with prostate problems. So a lot of the doctors and family care doctors are leaving. They're getting older. And no one is looking at this point to come in. So then it begs the question, what next? Is it going to be telemedicine? And if you're going to be telemedicine, you're going to be telemedicine with whom? And also, can we work with a larger institution that we can provide consultation services, that they can bring doctors over? Can we look at the university system and bring in the training of doctors in Maui, making Maui Memorial a training facility where you can work for your medical degree, and so you'll have the interns helping and doctors helping. There's all possibilities. But the thing is, change in some degree is going to be coming. And we will be working with labor, we'll be working with the staff, and we'll be working with the community and getting the input as to where we're going. We need to do this rather shortly, because time is of the essence. Our health is on the line. Maui is a small community where doctors prefer to go to larger communities where they can increase their revenue, how much money they make. So given all of this here, we are working very diligently on this issue with the members of the House, with the hospital administration, state and local administration, all of the parties involved. And hopefully in a relatively short time we'll be able to come up with some solution for medical needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you very much, Speaker. Okay, the next question is on marijuana. Will you legalize marijuana? Why or why not? This would be directed at the Chair of Judiciary, Representative Karl Rhoads.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of the question.
Would you legalize marijuana? Why or why not?
Well, as my colleagues know here, I do support legalization of marijuana for recreational use of small amounts. There are actually kind of two different tracks on this issue. One is full Colorado, or as you probably, many of you are probably aware, Colorado just beginning of this year started dispensing small amounts of marijuana in a legalized system, much like the way we regulate liquor. So that's one route. The other route is to just to what's referred to as decriminalization of marijuana, small amounts of marijuana. The bills that we've looked at so far at the Judiciary Committee have not been complete decriminalizations. It's still illegal, but the punishment would be a fine, a $100 fine for small amounts. I think the amount in the bill last year was 20 grams. So sort of the state of play right now is that we did look at both these approaches last year at Judiciary, and it became pretty clear that for the broader approach, for the recreational use one, the votes weren't there, and we didn't go any farther. The decriminalization one, we did pass out of the committee. It went to the floor, and on the floor, again, it was a very, very close vote, but we didn't quite have enough votes to move it forward. So I think it will be very useful to see what happens in Colorado and Washington, and see what the pitfalls are of that policy that they're adopting. We did learn a lot of useful information from our hearings. For example, apparently Pakalolo affects the brains of young people more severely than those who are adults, and we'll try to work that into whatever legislation eventually comes. But for this coming session, I think it's unlikely that anything will move forward, just because nothing really has changed from last year. So we'll see. I mean, like I say, I support it, but politics is the art of the possible. So we'll get there when we can. There was actually activity on the medical marijuana front that Representative Belatti is much more familiar with. So maybe you want to address that.
So we passed some laws that now will transfer the regulation of medical marijuana over to the Department of Health from the Department of Public Safety. That's a huge shift, because it's really looking at medical marijuana as a medicine. There is still more to do, but that is a big step forward. And I think what we're doing is we're looking at what's happening in other jurisdictions, what's happening in Colorado, and how they are, because Colorado actually has a very robust medical marijuana program, and they are running into some glitches with how do they both regulate the recreational marijuana and the medical marijuana. So I think, we are positioned in a good place here in Hawaii. There is the ability to access that medical need if you have that. We do not have dispensaries. I know that there has been some discussion about dispensaries, but like decriminalization or legalization, I don't know that there's going to be a lot of activity on that, but certainly we can have the conversation about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other lawmaker like to add anything? Representative Woodson.
To me, respectfully, and the beauty about the legislature is that we're not always going to agree on everything. Sometimes we agree to disagree, and while I respect the position, and obviously I'm not a chair, these individuals are chairs, I am not a chair, but I have serious concerns with legalizing marijuana, and they have been communicated throughout the community as well as concerns. So marijuana itself, the actual chemical compound, is a fact aromatic, which means that it's light enough, the compound itself is light enough to float in the air. Now, that's sometimes compared with cigarette smoke, which is a carcinogen, which is also aromatic. It's light enough to float in the air. We know that carcinogens in small amounts may not be dangerous, defined as secondhand smoke, but long term, they cause damages, which is why now in the state of Hawaii, we do not allow smoking inside, because there's effects not just for you. If you want to do it, that's okay, but it also affects people around you. Now, THC, the chemical compound that causes the effects found in marijuana, again, has that same physical characteristic. However, it does not take small doses. It only takes small doses in short periods of time, and that can have an effect on an individual. So my concern is, how do we regulate this stuff in like a park setting where there's children around? I guarantee you, if we were to legalize it and something happened to a child because they were found to have contact smoke in their system, that would be the end of that. So respectfully, just speaking from what I know from the community, I would have serious concerns with the legalization of marijuana.
Thank you very much, Representative Woodson. The next question we have is, what will you do to address coal burning at HCNS? This is for Representative Lee, Chris Lee. HCNS. Again, what will you do to address coal burning at HCNS? Representative Chris Lee, Chair Lee.
Thank you very much. You know, this has been a topic of discussion for some time here because not only here on Maui, but also in Oahu, we have a pretty large coal plant. And it's no secret, of course, coal is one of the dirtiest sources of energy we have. That being said, there's been a number of tries to move beyond it, to literally change the law to prohibit it. And the votes have never been there for that. So the model that we've stepped forward with over the past few years, and the chairs preceding me who've been working on this, have been to try and wean us off it and get us to a place where our energy goals, being 70% renewable by 2030, which is our first step to meet our Clean Energy Initiative targets, and beyond that, hopefully 100% by 2050 or 2060, are going to allow and account for this. Now, right now, even if we did nothing, it looks like coal as an import is, with oil and everything else that we bring in, on the way out. And that's because the federal government has stepped in. Air regulations and EPA rulings are getting stricter and stricter. More than that, here in our economy, what we really want to do is be self-sufficient. The only way we can control our own costs and the money that we pay on our electric bills is by controlling the sources of the energy that we're buying. And we cannot do that in a globalized market. We have to be able to do that here using the resources we have, the sun, the wind, waves, and everything else, because we are, unlike most other states, blessed with these resources. So the question is how we take advantage of that, and in the short term, wean ourselves off of the imports that we continue to rely on. Now, it gets a little more complicated than that, but I trust everybody here is up on their energy speak. So I'm going to go on for another 30 seconds. But basically, even if we did nothing, what's critical to note is that folks these days, here in Hawaii, paying 3 times the average cost for energy that you pay elsewhere in the nation, 3 times the cost, can no longer afford to pay that. I mean, quite frankly, I think everybody feels it. So the question is how we reduce our costs. Right now, coal costs us less than pretty much any other source of energy. Right now. Now that's going to change very soon, and it is changing on a regular basis. The cost of renewables is coming down considerably. Photovoltaics can now be put on your house for next to nothing. It pencils out for everyone. So as more and more people continue to adopt distributed energy generation, put panels on their houses, and produce their own power, the traditional 100-year-old model of electricity generation employed by our utilities is going to change, because pretty soon people will be going off the grid. They'll be using less energy. And that model of charging people, selling them power, is no longer going to be viable. They're not going to be able to afford it. So we're pushing the utilities, whether they're coal burning, oil burning, or what have you, to be able to adapt to a 21st century energy economy, which is going to save us all money, keep money in the pockets of not only our businesses, but our homeowners, allow folks to control their own energy destiny. And that's somewhere we have to get if we're going to sink or swim in this economy. We want to swim. We want to be able to have a solid grip on our energy future. We want to be able to be 70% renewable by 2030 and save all that money between now and then. So rest assured, it's going to happen. It's going to take time, because we can't just shut things down overnight. We don't have that ability, but we're working on it, and we've made more progress in the past few years than we've ever made before. Today, we are 18% renewable here in Hawaii. That doesn't sound like a lot, when 70% is our goal a couple of decades down the road. But we've come from zero, near zero, just 10, 12 years ago. So we are moving faster than we ever planned, and I am proud to say we are well on our way.
I think Representative Lee was also recognized as the top green lawmaker of the past year or two, so he knows his stuff. Thank you very much, Representative Lee. This next question will be going to the Chair of Water Land, Cindy Evans. This regards West Maui, Soil and Water Conservation District. These are the concerns. Loss of funding for conservation specialists, staff position. The other question or concern is inadequate funding for soil and water conservation districts from the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Representative Evans.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for everyone coming tonight, and I have to tell you, your representative does a really good job. So Representative Woodson is awesome. I'm starting my 12th year, and I've been around a lot of legislators, and he's a freshman. He's only been there 1 year, and he's very impressive. So, anyway. I'm really glad that you brought that question. Do I have a good answer for you right now? I don't. The Department of Land and Natural Resources is doing a presentation to the Finance Committee and the Ways and Means Committee next week, and I'll be there. They're going to tell us what their priorities are. They're going to tell us why they want funds for what they want funds for. So what we're going to hear is what their priorities are. They put together a budget. They gave it to the governor, and the governor and his director of budget and finance, I'm sure, changed it, adjusted it. So the wish list came from the department. The governor's sending his wish list down to us. So next week when we hear that, because of your question, I'll be able to ask that question. So it's very timely, and I appreciate it. One of the things I find as a legislator that's from the Big Island, I represent, if people are familiar with the Big Island, from the Kona Airport up to Hawaii at the very end of the island is my district. But when we're in Honolulu and we're dealing with these statewide issues, it's very difficult to understand what's really happening in your particular community. So hearing your story and asking that question actually shines the light on that issue for me, and I really appreciate it. And I want you to know, DLNR, Department of Land and Natural Resources, has many issues. The question is not there, but I bet you there's somebody out there wondering why we don't have enough DOCARE or enforcement officers on the island here. I'm sure it's a big issue. I actually, with Representative Nakashima, we met with our DOCARE officers on the Big Island, and when they went through the entire list of things that were responsible to enforce, I want you to tell you it's humanly impossible for anyone to enforce the amount of things we ask them to enforce. So they have to do priority setting constantly, every day. So, a lot of you aren't seeing them when we want them there. So we need to do something even about the enforcement. So, the questions that you have about DLNR, if you don't have an opportunity tonight to get your question up here, I invite you to write my office, repevans@capital.hawaii.gov. You can go to the www.capital.hawaii.gov website and find any of us. And let me know if you think there's something within DLNR that I should know is happening. If you want to be anonymous, just call my office and tell the story, and my staff will write it down and let me know. But now's the time to do it, because we're going to have them in front of us next week, and they're going to be telling us what they think's important. But it'd be nice to hear what you think's important. So anyway, thanks for the question.
Thank you, Chair Evans. The next question is targeted directly at your representative, Representative Woodson. It deals with early education. There's actually 3 questions, so if you don't mind, Representative Woodson, I'm going to go through all 3 of them, and if you can methodically answer each one, I think we'll try to save a little bit of time. What new initiatives, proposals, are you anticipating with regard to public education? Is question number 1. Question number 2, I've been to a couple of your events that you spoke, and you have brought up the issue of public education. What have you done to improve the public school education system in the community and for the state? As you can see, they overlap. And the third question also seems to overlap. It says, mandatory preschool for Department of Education is a nice idea. However, right now, today, Kahului School is overcrowded. 28 kindergarten children per room. No teacher aides due to reduced funding. Lack of sufficient rooms available. How can DOE provide for rooms? And these are directed towards Representative Woodson.
Thank you very much for that multifaceted group of questions. Education is very, very important, public education. Education is a tool in which we can provide equal opportunity for our community members. In terms of mandatory kindergarten, most of our community members here and across the state of Hawaii already choose to go to kindergarten. So it's actually just a very small percentage in terms of who that would actually affect. Of course, I am in strong support of funding preschool. There are obviously correlations between an individual or a child that participates in preschool and their overall student outputs throughout high school. In terms of what I've done working with the issue of education here in Hawaii, I've had an opportunity over the interim to work as a member of the Finance Committee, on behalf of the member of the Finance Committee, with the Department of Education. And specifically, I was tasked with looking at the department's operational budget as it relates to efficiencies and effectiveness related to funding. So I had an opportunity to meet with a lot of the department heads, Superintendent Mariyoshi, board chair, I'm forgetting his name, Chairman Don Horner, and a lot of these players in the educational community. And furthermore, that's compounded because we've actually are going through a transition, a good transition. So if you will remember, a couple years back, the President Obama administration, through the United States Department of Education, had an initiative called Race to the Top. And what that initiative said was, we have this pot of money. If you want to, at the state level, reform or improve or enhance or make adjustments to your school systems, we will give you money to do that. It was not mandatory, but if you want to take advantage of this pot of money, you can do that. So here in Hawaii, I am proud to say that we were awarded $75 million, I think the amount was, around 2010, for the Race to the Top initiative. One of the top competitors in the whole country, and our reforms were very significant. So I had an opportunity to take a look at those reforms, and I juxtaposed them against other successful school systems, both in the United States and around the world. And I will say that I am pleasantly surprised with the type of initiatives that we are now moving into. Now, of course, it's not perfect, and there is added stress on our teachers. We need to support our teachers. We need to support our administrators, but it has changed in a positive direction. One component that you hear about with all this change, specifically related to Hawaii and other places around the country, is this concept of Common Core Standards. And Common Core Standards came about as a collaborative initiative. It dealt with stakeholders here in the state of Hawaii, other stakeholders around the country, institutions like the National Governors Association, and they took a look at what children are learning around the world. What is their level? What proficiency level are they at? What is a child learning in Japan? What is a child learning in Massachusetts? What level should they be at in terms of their proficiency as it relates to math, reading, science, critical thinking? So the Department of Education, within their strategic plan, adopted these Common Core Standards. And basically what it says is, at this level, 3rd grade, 8th grade, 12th grade, this is the level we want our kids to be at in order from when they graduate high school, they are ready to compete with anyone around the world. Now that is not well known, but it is very exciting. It's happening here in Hawaii. So it speaks to the issue of effectiveness. So I've had an opportunity to work closely with the Department of Education as it relates to their funding and supporting those initiatives. As a side tangent, I am very grateful to Madam Chair Luke, who's entrusted me with that responsibility. She is probably one of the best finance chairs we've had in history, arguably. but she has done a great job, and she is a very good steward of the people's money. So she's very big on transparency, she's very big on effectiveness and efficiency with all the departments. So again, my specific task is the Department of Education. Lastly, just to bring to your attention, people look at school systems in two different ways primarily. One is effectiveness. We spoke about that issue. Two is fairness as it relates to funding each individual school, each individual student. So you may or you may not know, but Hawaii is bar none on top in terms of its equity issue, because we fund our school systems primarily to on an equal basis. There are some caveats, but in essence, we fund them on an equal basis. That's further operationalized by the fact that we have what's referred to as a weighted student formula. So what that says is, if you have a student that does not have English as a first language, just as an example, we feel that that student should be allocated a little bit more additional funding to address that concern. So again, it makes it even better for the student that they're getting the funding amounts that they need. Lastly, in terms of future legislation, there are some tweaks I would make with the educational system. I'm working closely with the Department of Education, the Board of Education, HSTA, Chair Takumi, who was unable to be here today, and Senator Takuda, who's the chair in the Senate chamber, on these slight adjustments that are minimally disruptive. It has two main components to it. One is just making sure on a daily basis we have early detections for students that are falling below that proficiency level as it relates to Common Core standards. So it says that we need to make sure that we do a good job of early detection, be it if the challenge is scholastic or if it's external. If there's an external factor that's prohibiting a child from learning, maybe it's something like they're not eating at home, so they cannot concentrate, or it's too hot in the classroom. So identifying those challenges early on so that they can be addressed, so those students can fulfill their full potential. The second component deals primarily with, because there are so many new changes happening within the Department of Education, there is stress on our educators. So we need to do a better job of supporting our teachers and our administrators. So what the second component of the bill does is, if in fact there are some best practices as it specifically relates to Common Core and Hawaii, because it's all brand new, we need to make sure that we're disseminating that information and that teachers are aware of what works and what does not work. Because also within the reforms, there's a component where teacher compensation is tied to student performance. So we want to make sure that we do a good job of supporting our teachers and supporting our students so that everyone wins in that situation.
Thank you, Representative, very much. The next question is for our Labor Chair, Representative Nakashima. Are you open to considering a state lottery program as a means of generating additional revenues to fund state operating expenses such as schools, hospitals, and state payrolls?
This lottery now come under the Labor Committee's jurisdiction. I think, for my part, generally speaking, I've not been in favor of opening any type of gaming in Hawaii. I think that the statistics I have seen, and with all due respect to the speaker, who I know has different views, I think that the statistics I've seen with regard to the social ills related to gaming are far outweigh the benefits that we may have. And I think that if you look at the situation in Las Vegas, for example, during the recent economic depression, they have taken a lot longer to recover from their economy than we have in ours. I think that diversification is really a better answer to increasing our economic viability than looking at those type of gimmicks that may provide us some short-term benefit.
Good job. Any additional comments from our lawmakers? I saw Speaker Souki with his hand on the mic, and I was wondering if he was gonna talk about gaming. I think he's gonna talk about gaming.
Well, I like to say my record with gaming has not been good. So I do not expect any success in the short term. We're probably not going to have any gaming, pass any gaming bills this go around. And the arguments that the legislature made is very good. The Las Vegas, in spite of all of the COVID bills and all the casinos there, they still have a high unemployment and still have other major problems. Of course, I'd like to say one of the major problems with Las Vegas is that they overbuilt. And because you overbuilt, then you cannot fill the rooms, and then in spite of that, my record of passing a gaming bill has not been good, so I'm not going to try anyone to do that.
Speaker Joe Souki, thank you very much. Okay, I've got 4 sets of questions here, and they all seem to deal with the same issue. So I'm going to cluster them together. And it's going to be directed at Speaker Joe Souki, because him and both Representative McKelvey were the spearheads of the tax incentive for the film production programs coming over here. They did a great job in passing this and bringing jobs to Hawaii. Speaker Joe, if you don't mind, I'm going to just, in the interest of time, I'm going to rattle through these questions, and if you want me to go over them again, feel free to do so. But they're all feel-good questions. I think they're happy by what you and Rep. McKelvey and all of us did, especially on the House side. How do you feel about the increased movie and TV business on Maui? Can you help? The answer is yes, I believe. I'd hate to speak for the Speaker, but we passed a major bill this year, which he spearheaded. So that was one of the questions. Let me see. Another question is from a 14-year-old who says, thank you for your efforts in crafting and passing the film tax credit bill. I'm interested in making Maui the base for my acting career, and I'm interested in what steps you, the individual legislators, are doing to foster a healthy industry for continued success in the outer islands. So this is just another question, and I thank you. A couple other questions. Oh, did you want to go, or did you want me to continue? Oh, okay. Again, in the interest of time, given that the expense of living is significantly higher in other states, and there are logistical expenses in making film productions to come here, what other incentives can we offer other than increasing the tax incentive further in order to compete with other contiguous states? And Mr. Speaker, the last question I have, again, it's a thank you, and it talks about the tax incentive. Thank you for the 25% tax incentive to attract films to Maui County. We, the film community, are hoping there will be more. States such as Louisiana have a 30% incentive, along with a 5% payroll incentive, and they have created a thriving film industry in their state. Maui County is gearing up to compete with Oahu for all future productions, and we would like to know what we need to do in order to raise the tax incentives necessary to attract more productions to our county. So, Speaker Joe Souki.
Well, I don't think we're going to be raising the taxes. This past session, we raised the credit for Neighbor Island and for Oahu, a very generous credit that we gave for the film industry. And I believe we increased it up from 15 to 20, and and 10 to 15 for Oahu. And so we're going to wait and see how well it does. Now, I'd like to say this. We have the most beautiful weather, the healthiest environment, and I think that should be a lot in luring the film industry over here in Hawaii. So as far as increasing credits, I don't believe so. It's much too soon, and we need to look at at how whether the production is going to be increasing commensurately with the increasing credit that we have given them. So this will take a couple of years to evaluate. Thank you very much.
And Representative Woodson.
The guest speaker standing up, so I should follow suit and stand up also. You know, I'm very excited about this film industry and the promise it can bring to Hawaii. I think you mentioned that Louisiana has a 30% film credit for their state. Our film credit is actually extremely competitive. It's actually internationally competitive. As I understand it, Louisiana's tax credit, it has a lot of strings attached to it. Our 25% for the island of Maui, it has very little strings attached to it. So it further attracts film production to come over to the island. Now, you may not know it, but we have a very active and bustling film community. They are eager to work. I think from a state standpoint, if you take a look at the film industry, it brings in about, I believe, $400 million a year for the state of Hawaii. And that's money coming into the state and not money circulating. So that makes it even more in terms of the multiplier effect that it has. We have the opportunity on Maui with the additional 5% tax credit, which is to further incentivize film productions to come on Maui for Maui workers to come out to Maui and shoot their film productions. It is a great opportunity. We can actually increase that $400 million, an additional $200 million annually. That's $6 million just based upon what we've done thus far. So where we are with the tax credit is good, as Speaker said. We can see what's going to happen. It's a very promising industry, and it goes to the fact that we need to look at ways in which we're going to diversify our economies. And this is a potential leg in which we can use to really give individuals an opportunity to stay here and to practice film. And not only if you want to be in front of the camera, but also behind the camera. You know, there is a lot of jobs, and a lot of people rely on that as well. And those are good union jobs that pay high wages and good benefits. So the legislature, at least in the House chamber and also in the Senate, we very much supported that tax credit of 25% for the neighbor islands and of course 20% for Oahu. But that is something that's very exciting. I look forward to working with the film industry and to getting business here on the island for our workers.
I believe Representative Evans also had some comments.
Thank you. I wanted to add to this discussion briefly about how we need to diversify the economy and why we can't get the innovation and technology industry really kicking off in Hawaii to diversify it. And when we talk to people about coming to Hawaii, they talk about our schools, they talk about the cost of living, they talk about other things that might attract people to come, not only live here, but be employed here and feel they have a future here for them and their family. So we get the very complicated answers when we talk to people about why they won't come to Hawaii. I think the tax credit is a really good idea, but from my perspective, you know, the Big Island doesn't have what I see nearly the passion for the film industry as Maui has right now. And what I'm hoping is that all the partners come to the table to find what is it that'll actually make it happen. For example, the mayor and the county council, what can they do to be at the table at the same time as these tax credits? So it's not going to be just the tax credit. It'll help, but there's a lot more to it. So, you know, maybe somebody offers the land, maybe, you know, the roads, the electricity, the water system. It's very complicated. So whoever's looking at the business model as to coming here in Hawaii is going to have all those different pieces to the puzzle. And what I'm hoping is that the partnering and the collaboration, and that everybody comes to the table and they give or they participate and they make it all happen. But it's going to be a community and a group effort, because I don't think the tax credit, we made it attractive, but it's not going to be what makes it really happen.
Okay, and members, in the interest of time, I've got 9 questions that relate to Senate Bill 1, same-sex marriage. So with your kind indulgence, I'm going to try to go rapid fire. Instead of going off all 9, I'm going to go one by one. But for the lawmakers here, I know it's kind of weird asking a politician to keep it down to 30 seconds or a minute. But if we can focus on a question with quick answers, rapid fire, I'll at least be able to get to these 9 questions. Again, I'll do my best, okay? So this relates to Senate Bill 1. It's religious freedom. Now this is the concern that the person had. Question of the definition, public accommodation, in light of the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission usage. I'm thinking they're probably talking, the question probably deals with churches, public accommodations, and will they be sued if they discriminate based on someone who might be in the LGBT community? Speaker Souki, followed by Representative Rhoads.
Well, relative to public accommodations, I believe the legislature provided exemptions. And that has been one of the reasons that I went and supported SB 1. Is that if we did not support SB 1, and we allowed the courts to pass it, which inevitably they will, as they're doing now, you would not have the exemptions for solemnization and public accommodation. The court will simply say, and they're simply saying right now, that gay marriage is legal. It's illegal not to have gay marriage and to allow, based on the DOMA Act, where the DOMA Act by itself stated that the marriage is not exclusive for heterosexual. In fact, it ruled it out. So in taking that language out, it provided an avenue for same-sex marriage. And the result is what you see is going on now. We have 18 states, I believe, that have through either court or through legislation adopted same-sex marriage. Now in the case of Hawaii, we provided exemptions for marriage, for solemnization. There'll be no change as to what has transpired in the past. You can continue to do what you're doing. If you're a Mormon, you can limit it to Mormons. Catholics can limit to, and to whoever you want. And as far as public accommodations, you can have the celebration after the Mass, and you can dare again be as it's done in the past. You can invite who you want in the accommodation, in the public accommodation. So in this case, there's been no change at all. In fact, what we did is that we codified it, made it into law. And so I'm going to have Rhoads go in, and he'll give you a little bit legal background on it, and which has done a very good job. And I want to commend Rhoads for the wonderful job he did in SB 1. Thank you very much, Rhoads.
Chair Rhoads.
Just briefly to add on, the religious exemption that we put in on the House side with co-chair Luke and I and the committees, the Finance Committee and the Judiciary Committee, is if it's not the broadest, deepest religious exemption of any of the states that have passed same-sex marriage, it's very close. So and that's not the way the bill came over from the Senate. It didn't have the broad exemption that we put in. So we did, the 55 hours of testimony were not in vain. We did listen to what people were saying and modified the bill accordingly. Want to go next? Okay.
Thank you. There's still a number of questions on same-sex marriage, and actually these are some that are tangentially related to them. Let me explain. This is a parent that's saying, I'm concerned about pono choices. Why do you think this is appropriate for young children? Now, how do I elect to opt out my child from the program? I think pono choices is totally inappropriate. There's another question that's very similar. Besides homeschools, what other avenues are there to not have our children subject to same-sex parent teachings in our public schools? There is an answer. The reason I know is because I wrote the bill. It's House Bill 399. It has an opt-out clause. You can opt out your child from any of these courses. It deals with sex health education. I think it's very important. It costs the state over $20 million a year dealing with teen pregnancy. So I think it's important that we have sex health education that's age appropriate, number one. But number two, I agree with many of you out there that there should be an opt-out clause. We don't have it in law, in statute yet. But if you would go on your computer and look up House Bill 399, it's currently in conference. I cannot predict if it's going to pass or not. I've drafted a bill again to reintroduce, but we'll see. We'll see. So I'm hoping that answers your questions on these issues. The other questions, I think, are self-explanatory. Some of them were marriage equality, yes or no. You can simply take a look at our vote. You'll know what we voted. Some of the other questions, and again, this will be open to all of the panelists. What justification was used when ignoring the overwhelming majority of public testimony against Senate Bill 1? And why did you vote for or against same-sex marriage? And why do you feel that the people should not have a right to vote on this matter? And again, we can probably talk on these issues for over an hour or two. So many of us will be available after we're done. But because of time constraints, I really wanted to at least hit upon the questions, give a brief answer, and move on, because there's so many more questions that are also equally important to so many of you in here. Anyone else wanted to add on the Senate Bill 1 question? Justin Woodson, Representative Woodson.
Respectfully, this is a very emotional, extremely emotional issue, and it was very extremely divisive. For me, I think that, humbly, I don't think the exemptions were strong enough. I don't know if there's something we could have done to make it better, but I do know that how I read what public accommodation is matched up against the activities that the churches sometimes takes, it seems like sometimes it leaves the churches susceptible to lawsuit. Now, we're working with our Attorney General to make sure that if any lawsuits come about, especially if they're frivolous, that we're working with him in our capacity that we can to deal with it. But that was just a very emotional issue, and my heart breaks for individuals on both sides. That needs to be said. I just wish that there was a way in which we could have afforded these rights to individuals, because I do believe that's government's function, while maintaining the traditional definition of marriage. To me, that would have been a solution that brought a majority of both sides together. Right now, I'm even looking out, there's tension in the faces. So still yet, it's still very emotional and raw. But if there's a way in which we could have worked together, I think that would have been better. But again, I respect all these lawmakers up here, and it was a tough vote you had to make either way.
Thank you, Representative Woodson. This is directed at Chair Luke, the Finance Chair. Part of being a good legislator is bringing home the bacon. Has Representative Woodson brought any funding back to his district? Representative Luke.
The short answer is yes. You know, Representative Woodson, he was appointed by the governor, and you know, just in his 1 year as a legislator, he worked really hard, and as he said, he's actually the finance point person for education issues. In addition to that, you know, when the finance committee, we do neighbor island visits, or you know, we go to all the islands to look at critical issues. He made it a point for us to look at some of the district schools that need repairs. For instance, Maui High School. Have you been to the campus? It's really dilapidated, and you know, a lot of the schools in this district needs a lot of renovation. You know, you talk about standards, but a lot of kids, they cannot learn in a substandard classroom, and he's been an advocate for not only the public schools, but you know, working with the Maui legislators for Maui Community College. Maui Community College is the only community college that provides a 4-year program, and that's the credit to the legislators sitting here, the Maui legislators you have here. Is this passed out? Okay, so tonight, if you can pick up his newsletter, you know, this will highlight some of the things that he has done. And in addition to Maui, some of the Maui schools and Maui Memorial Hospitals, you know, he fought hard to make sure that the roads are taken care of. You know, he's constantly coming and seeing the finance staff and myself talking about different issues. So I know he will continue to be an advocate. So if you can pick this up and show some of the, lot of, you know, if you know Justin, he's not a typical politician. You know, he's not gonna go out and brag about things, and he's not gonna be very outspoken about some of the great things he has done. But you know, when you look at, we call them the freshman class. They're the newly elected or newly appointed members, and you look at people like Justin, Kaniela Ing from Kihei. We have one of the strongest freshman class we have seen in a while. They represent the districts vigorously, care about the district issues, care about the state issues. And so you know, we're very lucky to have Justin and to be working with him. And you know, I hope you can recognize that, you know, you folks also share in our good fortune of having him as a representative. So thank you for allowing us to be here. I just wanted to recognize 3 important people in the audience, and without these 3 people, you know, some of these folks won't be able to do their jobs, and these are the 3 spouses. And first of all, I wanted to recognize Mrs. Souki. And the wife of Representative Yamashita. And of course, last but not least, wife of Representative Woodson. And you know, for Oahu representatives, we just have no idea the sacrifices that these people make. You know, I mean, think about being away from home for even a couple weeks, you know, forgetting your medication or forgetting some clothes. I mean, Carl and I live virtually about 10-15 minutes away from the Capitol. But for these guys, you know, if they forget something, you know, they gotta think about, okay, going back home, pick these things up. But it's not just their sacrifices. Think of the sacrifices that the family, the spouses, and their children make. And so we wanted to thank you folks and thank the audience for sharing these people with us, because without the wisdom and the experience that they provide to Oahu representative and the representatives who are sitting here, you know, we won't be able to truly appreciate some of the needs of your districts. And I just wanted to especially recognize Representative Yamashita, who is represented by his wife. You know, a lot of the infrastructure funding, the school fundings, the Maui Memorial fundings, it's because of Representative Yamashita. And you know, he worked really closely with the Maui representatives. sitting here. And so, he's also, all these Maui representatives are very, soft-spoken, cordial, but they represent the districts very fiercely. And when you try to allocate funds that go to the district or go to something, they fight like crazy to make sure that Maui gets more than its share. And you can see by Maui Memorial, you can see by Maui Community College, you guys get your goods. So thank you.
I can't let go by saying that, he was the bomb to get that much money. I gotta tell you, as a freshman, I didn't do as good. Thank you.
Good job. I don't have it with me, but I saw it earlier. There was a question regarding Speaker Souki. Yes, I'm sorry, Speaker Souki.
Yes, I've been remiss, and Representative Yamashita did send his regrets. Is unable to come here, but as was mentioned, he's a hard-working representative, and we're very happy to have him here. And apologize to my wife for not introducing her. Aloha.
I apologize. We've already gone a little over time, so I'm going to leave with Representative Rhoads in about 5 minutes. But our good majority leader here, Scott Saiki, will continue. We'll go a little, if it's okay with you, Representative Woodson, we'll go a little over time. We've been inundated with questions, and we want to make sure we do our best to answer all your questions. So please, with your kind indulgence, forgive both myself and Representative Rhoads. We had a flight earlier. He has a flight earlier. So this is to Representative Rhoads. Will you sponsor a bill to make pseudoephedrine a controlled substance? As you know, it is the active ingredients that's used in making crystal meth. Representative Rhoads.
Yes, it's an interesting question. I did actually introduce a bill a couple of years ago on this topic because, as everybody knows, it's a precursor to meth production. I was thinking of reintroducing it, but in discussions with people recently, sorry, before you clap, I was in discussions with people recently who basically indicated that the system that we did set up, I don't remember when it was exactly, but there is a recording requirement if you buy any amount of pseudoephedrine, and it makes what they call smurfing harder to do, which is one person going around from drugstore to drugstore to drugstore buying more and more and more. The other issue that has come to my attention is that apparently most of the meth production, and this is hard to verify, but my understanding at this point is that most of the meth production is not here in the islands. It's being shipped in from other places. So, it isn't a topic I'm interested in, and I have introduced bills on it in the past, but at this point I don't have any plans to do anything, at least this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Rhoads. The next question is directed at our Human Services Chair, Representative Mele Carroll. Would you consider drug testing for those people who are and will apply for welfare or any government assistance? And this is the person's comment. Before I got hired by my employer, I had to go through drug testing so I could work and make money. Why wouldn't these people on welfare not have to take a drug test before they receive money? Representative Carroll.
Thank you very much for the question. I actually did introduce legislation 2 years in a row, and I made national news because of it, and there was a lot of arguments in regards to whether or not we were violating people's constitutional rights. We get a lot of inquiries about that because we know, whether we talk about it or not, that our government funding that is helping our families is being used for that kind of substance abuse, habits and stuff. And so myself, and I believe also Representative Mizuno, when he was the chair of Human Services, he also introduced the bill, and several others. I can still continue that discussion because I think it's a valuable discussion. I can tell you also that the opposition that I got was from many rural areas, because even though families know that their loved ones are in this situation with especially ICE, they don't want to lose the funding because they have families to feed. So it is a valuable discussion, and we need to look at everything. But I'd be happy to introduce it again, because like all of us, we work really hard, and that's our taxpayers' dollars, and we need to do something about the situation in regards to how our monies are being spent. And more importantly, I know that there's a lot of efforts that are being made in our communities, as well as with the Department of Human Services, to look at our homeless situation and regarding our drug problem as well, and other issues. So thank you for that question.
Okay, thank you, Representative Carroll. We have the cafeteria reserved till about 7:30, so I'm gonna prioritize the remaining questions with the Maui oriented questions. So the first set are transportation related for Speaker Souki and Rep. Woodson. The first question is, when will the bypass for Upcountry and Kihei Road start? But when will the bypass for Upcountry and Kihei Road start?
As far as I know, the state has no plans at the present time for bypass in Kihei. I know that the county was looking at it some time back, and I don't know what's the status. But the state has no plans for bypass there. We just completed that some years back at Lani. Upcountry, we completed the highway. We have 2 lanes going and two lanes coming back. So right now we're concentrating on the access road at the airport and on the Lahaina, where we still have work to do in the bypass there. But none is planned, as far as I know, for Makuaho and Upcountry.
Okay, thank you. The next transportation question is, when can an overpass or an underpass in Kahului begin with an airport bypass? So I think it's when can there be an airport bypass?
As a former transportation chairman, I was quite involved in these issues. One is that, of course, the cost factor, and another one is the environmental factor, and we are looking at the possible EIS for an overpass for the access road, but that was going to be sometime in the future. Right now, there is no plans for an overpass from the going across the Hana Highway to the airport. But there is a possibility for some time in the future to look at that. Thank you.
Okay, and the third transportation question is on Kahului Airport. What is our support for having customs or immigration at the airport so that international flights have the option to fly directly to Maui?
What's that question again?
What is the support for having customs or immigration at Kahului Airport so that international flights can fly directly to Maui?
Well, right now we have a lot of flights coming directly to Maui. They do have planes smaller planes that can land here, and they do come directly from the East Coast over here, from the Orient, and they come directly here. We are working on a plan. In fact, it's already on the drawing board and ready to move on, and we need to change the runaway entirely. We're going to have to dig the old runaway out and put new runaway in. FAA has said that currently we need to improve it. If we do not improve it, we would lose all transportation FAA assistance money, which is about 90% of the dollars that we get. In the meantime, while we are working on that reconstructing the runaway, we'll be building another runaway. That runaway would be able to have larger planes coming in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to move on to the next topic, which is Maui College. There's a few questions on this. Generally, the question is, what is the legislature's commitment for provide additional general fund support for Maui College, given that physical facilities need to be expanded, that there may be increases in enrollment. So what is the legislature's support for additional general funding for Maui College?
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, in the past, the legislature, in terms of CIP funding, has been very generous to Maui College. So if you take a look at that campus compared to other campuses, it's very beautiful and it's pretty much in great shape. So I would humbly suggest that the need is not for physical improvements to that campus. Now, having said that, of course, we always need to enhance and make improvements. But the need is more in terms of the operational costs and the operational funding to run the school. So as an example, there needs to be more money for staffing, specifically relating to outreach into the community, so we can make sure that we have, to give individuals opportunities to take that avenue if they so choose. Again, from past legislators, Maui Community College, UHMC is in pretty great shape compared to other campuses. And you take a look at its R&M list, its repair and maintenance list, compared to that to other campuses, it's way down there. It's almost minuscule. So we're doing very well with regards to that. The need is actually in terms of increasing the operational costs, and we'll be fighting very hard this year to at least minimally get a $1.5 million increase in the operational costs, operational funding as it relates to UHMC.
Okay.
If I can quickly add to give you a historic background on this here. The university system, including the community colleges, have autonomy from the state, from the legislature. That is, that if they need to raise their own funds through tuition and revenue bonds. And through revenue bonds, they need to have the capability of paying for the revenue bonds, rather than coming from the general funds, which is paid for by the taxpayer. This is the system that we have with the university right now. However, that doesn't preclude the community college from Maui coming in and asking for general funds. And I know Clyde was here, and he was working and speaking to all the members here. Don't forget Maui Community College, and to make an addition in general funds. But normally, the community college and university is paid all with special funds from the revenue that the university earns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a question on interactive communication for Maui residents and nearby residents. The Maui County Council has an interactive system for district offices in Hana, Lanai, and Molokai. Will the House leadership support such a system or mechanism for non-Oahu residents to allow for individuals and small business owners to keep updated with the legislature? So Rep Woodson, if you want to take that in.
Can you go over the question again? It's one of the...
Okay. I'll summarize it. It's whether the legislature will support a mechanism for inter-island testimony, for long-distance testimony for neighbor island residents.
They would support inter-island?
Like a telecommunication system.
Subsidy?
Telecommunication system for testimony, public participation?
You know, that's something that we're actually looking into considering. I think what's special about tonight, again, is oftentimes our community doesn't have the chance to interact directly with these legislators, both the core leadership and also the subject matter chairs and the other legislators. We don't have the luxury of getting in our car and driving down to the Capitol and sharing our concerns. We have to actually fly and spend a lot of money. So it is only, I would say, right to consider the possibility of having some sort of telecommunications. We're working towards moving in that direction. A couple of years back, we had reams. There was reams of paper being used in all the committee hearings. So sometimes you would go to the hearing and there were stacks of paper of testimony. We transitioned over to a paperless system, first the Senate and then the House chamber. So we're working on technologies in which we can make the legislators more accessible to all the different communities, because that is a very valid question. Thank you for bringing it up, and we're moving, I think, in that direction. And of course, I think the legislature will support those efforts.
Okay, we have a question. This is, I think, for Representative Lee. What is the status of the PV system?
Thanks. This has been an issue that's come up on Oahu as well. I think the question is referring to people trying to install PV systems, running into trouble not being able to afford the upfront cost, number one, and number two, being held up by the utility in processing their paperwork to try and get on. This has been a real problem because one of our biggest industries is the alternative energy industry, and it's the number one way that people can save money on their bills, by taking control of that. So one of the things we passed this past year to address the cost is a first-in-the-nation bill which addresses the upfront money that people have to put down, because not a lot of folks can afford $40,000 at a pop to put in PV and start saving money. So what we're doing in a public-private partnership is putting money from the state toward this. So you can install a system with no money down, and then instead of paying down a regular electric bill, your bill will go down because now you're producing your own energy, and in its place, you're paying down the system on your electric bill. It's the least paperwork possible. It's simple. It pencils out. You'll own the system in a few years, and after that, save thousands or tens of thousands of dollars in the years to come. Now, that bill passed this past year. The system's going to roll out this April. I think Representative Woodson and the other folks here on Maui are going to be able to keep you abreast of how to apply if you're interested. It's a win-win for everyone, and quite frankly, a no-brainer. If I owned a home, I'd be doing it. The second thing is that if you've already got a system and you're in the works of installing, and the utility has said, you know, we've got problems, we're reaching our caps in our circuits, what do we do next? We're negotiating with our utilities right now, and I say negotiating, we're really strong-arming our utilities, because we cannot afford to stop this right now and prevent anyone else from getting on and saving money. So we're working with them to create fixes to the technical problems that are going to that have, they said, been preventing folks from getting on board. We should be able to buy another year or two for people to continue to get on, to be able to save money. The long term is that we want to modernize the grid, and we're going to drag the utilities kicking and screaming, even if they push back, to be able to make sure that we get smart meters on homes, we upgrade our grid architecture, because we can accept a lot more alternative energy and a lot more people can start to save money. That is happening right now. We're going to have a few bills addressing that this coming year. So keep your eyes open and keep in contact with your local rep to be able to figure out how you can take advantage of that.
Okay, thank you. Woodson?
Yeah, thank you. No, this is an avenue which is very exciting in terms of how Maui and how the state of Hawaii is moving forward. So we are so far ahead in terms of our renewable energy efforts that entire jurisdictions are taking a look at what we're doing here in Hawaii. And not only jurisdictions, but actual countries are taking a look at what we're doing here in Maui County and the state of Hawaii. So speaking specifically of that bill pay system, it's basically the GEMS program. So I'll keep you abreast to it, but it stands for Green Energy Market Synchronization. And what it does is, again, like Representative Lee, Chair Lee had mentioned, is
it says that instead of paying costs to these high energy bills, you pay for a low cost loan, and you're making incremental payments monthly. When you're done paying off that loan, the result will be that your energy costs will be extremely low. That's because your energy is going to be mitigated by your solar panels. So it's very exciting. I had a meeting with Director Lee, who is in charge of the Department of Business and Economic Development and Transportation on the state side. They're going to be ramping out this initiative hopefully in the middle of this year. So as more information is available, they're working out the details, I'll be sure to let you folks know. It's a very exciting thing that's happening for the state of Hawaii.
Okay, there's a couple of questions on the healthcare exchange. What are the plans for age rating for small businesses, and who should pay to maintain the exchange?
So I could talk on these issues, but the short answer is for age rating for small businesses for the 2015 plans. The federal government came down with regulations that basically directed state government, the administrations, the insurance commissioner, to decide whether age rating will apply to small businesses. That deadline for that decision was December 31st, so it's not in the hands of the legislature. For the long-term question, though, of the ACA implementation, in the Obamacare Act, there is a section that allows for innovation. And there are many folks in our community who believe that we have a very good system through the Prepaid Healthcare Act, and there were many people also pushing for us to be outside of Obamacare through this innovation waiver process, and that is something that various folks within state government are looking at, including folks at the legislature, but that process wouldn't kick in until 2017. So we are in some ways stuck with the healthcare reform that we have through Obamacare through 2016. With respect to the question on who should pay for the Health Connector, again, the answers are complex. In fact, the Health Connector is not, the first part of the Health Connector is actually eligibility and determination if you qualify for Medicaid. So the Health Connector is actually linked to our COLEA system, and if you are kicked out of the COLEA system because you are not Medicaid eligible but you qualify for premium tax credits, you're that person who will then go to the Health Connector to purchase plans. Now, there are different parts on the Health Connector where businesses can have their employees go and purchase plans, or individuals. So the question is of who should pay for the Health Connector is not that simple. It's not just saying let's kick it to the people who are buying health insurance on the exchange. I think the direction that this House is taking, and we have been a little bit more focused on asking questions, asking the tough questions of the Health Connector, is we want to know what their costs are. What are their costs for operating the website, for maintaining it, because those kinds of systems that they've had to create, the back end and the front end systems on the computers, to talk to other federal databases, to talk to state databases, is actually a very complex system that requires security, constant maintenance, and those types of things. So we have to understand, and that's what one of the Finance Committee's task is to do, is to ask the Health Connector, what are your costs? What are your labor costs? What are your maintenance, ongoing technology costs? And what are you going to need to be sustainable? And then we can then ask who's going to pay for that.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to answer a question real quickly. Somebody actually typed out a question, and I wanted to address it. But the question is basically whether or not the legislature is open to pre-funding an oncoming settlement in a class action lawsuit involving Department of Homeland and about 2,700 beneficiaries. My answer is that the legislature usually does not pre-fund settlements. In this case, the Attorney General and the department and the court are working on a settlement. So I would assume that if there is a settlement that is agreed, that is approved by the court, then the legislature would have a difficult time not funding it. I think the legislature would have to probably fund it. So, but at this point, pre-funding is probably not an option. Okay, I'll take one more question as for Representative Carroll and Representative Belatti. This is on substance abuse programs and what is our commitment to restoring cuts and addressing issues like meth problems and the homelessness, vandalism, and child neglect that results from that.
That's a really good question. We all see it in our communities, and there's been so many discussion from meeting to meeting, whether we're talking about just homelessness that comes up, whether we're talking about family issues that comes up. Yes, the question is the funding, and it always becomes a question as to what are we willing to prioritize and make it our number one issue, should that be when asking for funding. We have to work closely with not just our constituents, but with our colleagues who are in finance, who are also in the Senate. We have to work cooperatively with everybody because it's not a one answer question, because there are so many priorities out there. But I can tell you, as your chair of human services, it is on my priority list. I've had many meetings with the department, and I've been working with our chair of health. We talk about it as well. And I can tell you that your representative from this district, who is the vice chair of housing, and he also sits in our bracket, we've talked about it in the housing committee as well. And so it's a really good question, and we need to look at where the funding lies, but we also need to have champions for these kinds of programs. And that's what people like us are doing. You wouldn't find not one person in the legislature who doesn't support programs like that. But the question is, where is the money coming from? And if my colleague wants to add to that.
I would just say ditto to that, and I think this summer I spent immersed in understanding the ACA, the benefits that are coming with it, what's happening with insurance plans, and I will say one of the funding sources is going to be through the essential health benefits that are part of all plans. So the question to ask is how are the delivery of those mental health services, substance abuse services actually occurring in the community? I will also say that with regards to the homelessness issue, there has again been lots of activity in MedQuest in looking at how do we create Medicaid healthcare homes that identify those folks who we know are the high utilizers of the emergency rooms, and they tend to be people who are substance abusers, they have multiple comorbidities. You're talking about these people who are cycling in and out because they have serious issues. So there's a lot of activity around how do we get those folks into the programs that they need to be, into the homes, the medical home treatments that they need to be in. How do we put wraparound services around them? But this is an effort that again involves multiple committees and funding sources. And one good thing is that with regard to the Medicaid health home initiative, there is going to be a request to DHS. And to the legislature for a $2 million appropriation that will then draw down another $18 million to fund this from the federal government. So that's a 90-10 match that you often hear with programs associated with Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. So there are initiatives that we're looking at to address these serious needs, and it's just something that we all have to be vigilant about. Thank you.
When she's talking about health homes, she's talking about our health centers and how they're working together statewide and how to draw those funds down.
Okay, thank you. It's 7:30. So before I ask Representative Woodson to give some closing comments, I wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, we apologize that we couldn't get through all of the cards. There are a few more that are unanswered. But I'm going to give these to Representative Woodson, and I think he can find a way to provide responses for everyone who attended tonight. Second, we'll be here for a few more minutes afterwards. So if you have any individual questions for us, please, please let us know. Thank you very much for attending tonight, and I'd like to ask Representative Woodson to give some closing comments.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Really, it truly is about us working together and shaping our future. And conversations like this are extremely important. And hopefully, we can continue these type of conversations in the future. I want to take a second to acknowledge all the legislators that came out from different islands. Again, we started. For all intents and purposes, we started a session, and they took time out of their busy schedules to be here to meet with you. So I want to give them a round of applause for being there. Thank you so much, guys. You didn't have to do it, but you did, so I greatly appreciate you being out here. Lastly, in closing, we intended to try to get through all the questions so that we could have an open mic section at the ending. Apparently we did not have enough time. There were still questions to be answered. I will be following up, our office will be following up for all the questions that are outstanding. And again, those of us that can stick around will be around for a couple of minutes to answer any individual questions that you may have. But lastly, I just want to plant a seed and say that if you like this type of event, please tell your friends and your family about what happened here tonight. And let them know if they have questions or concerns to please contact their respective legislators. And it takes all of us being involved to make our communities continually to be better. And we live in a great place. We're all blessed to be here, but let's continue to work together to make Hawaii a better place. And thank you so much for coming out tonight.